This is the Instant Speed Podcast, episode number 43. Our guest today is Mitch Leslie, aka Uber, a wonderful caster, famous for Overwatch League, as well as getting into Flesh and Blood. We're going to be talking about his journey through casting, as well as his recent surge in awesome performance in Flesh and Blood, what the future holds for him in Flesh and Blood, including a wonderful, awesome, high-level tournament that he's putting on. We'll talk about that. But before that, let's just get to the facts. Again, I want to remind you that the Instant Speed Podcast is always brought to you by FAB Cards. FAB Cards is the place to go for Flesh and Blood and all your other trading card needs. Get all the tools you need to navigate the world of Wraith, shipped directly to your door. You don't have to leave the house. Ain't that a thing? Ain't that a great thing? Go to www.kfabcards.com. That's www.kayfabecards.com. All right, let's get to the facts before we get to Uber. The banned and restricted announcement, poof, out of thin air, just totally ninja dusted us and said, hey, stubby hammerers are no more. Stubby hammerers are banned in Classic Constructed, and the next BNR announcement will be scheduled for August 30th. Now, also, the Nationals Championships invites list are out. There's also an update to the ELO ratings that have been published, my friends. So if ranking is something that you are very, very in tune with, that are you very curious about where you stand on the global spectrum of skill sets, the ELO ratings are published. You can go to FAB TCG, check out your profile, and see what your updated ELO ranking is. I also want to welcome everybody who's listening to the Instant Speed Podcast Discord channel. We've got tournaments that go on there, deck discussions, and also you can chime in on all the content that we put out here, be it the stack or the Instant Speed Podcast itself. You can sort of contribute, chime in, discuss. Lots of cool things going on. And finally, a big thank you to all of our Patreon supporters. You can go to patreon.com/instantspeedpod. For as little as $1 a month, you can support the podcast. And it means a lot to us. And I cannot stress this enough. This is not necessarily about, making fat revenue so I can go ahead and drive a Maserati one day. This is literally about just keeping the lights on and supporting the content. It means so much, but you never mean more than you guys just tuning in and listening. So thank you to all our Patreon subscribers and supporters. And you can go again to patreon.com/instantspeedpod. All right, that's out of the way. We've got Mitch Leslie, aka Uber, on the program. The Instant Speed Podcast welcomes one of the most charismatic voices in all of esports. He is an official caster for the Overwatch League, and most recently a major threat on the Flesh and Blood tournament circuit. He is also responsible for the upcoming Beefcake Brawl, which definitely needs a name revision because that is basically the nickname moniker that
we'll get the focus groups on that one.
Yeah, we need outside influence in terms of naming this. I'm not a marketing guy, but the Beefcake Brawl, aka the Uber Classic. Welcome to ISP, Mitch Leslie, aka Uber. How are you, my friend?
I'm good. Yeah, not too shabby. I'm sojourning in Queensland, in Australia for a few weeks here while I'm sort of waiting to get my passport updated with my visa so I can actually return back to the United States where I sort of live and be with my family. So, look, bittersweet. I'm here seeing my family in Australia, but I can't leave until that's all sorted. So in the meantime, I'm playing some FAB, catching up with family, and hanging out with you, big fella.
Well, big fella. I mean, I've seen some of your streams, your wonderful fitness streams, which is great, and we'll dig into that a little bit later. But like you mentioned, it's just funny that you're in Australia right now. You're currently, you make residence in the United States, but your origin is in Australia. I just recorded an episode of The Stack with Matt Rogers. The video we're recording this on August 2nd, which is Today's a Tuesday? Today's a Tuesday. The video for the stack would come out on, I think, the day before ISP does. It's all kinds of, we're in the future, we're in the past. It's all the nonsense. But ultimately, one of the things that I mentioned to Matt, who's from New Zealand, I said, I asked him, I said, all right, Matt, Canada is to the U.S. as New Zealand is to Australia. And I'm wondering if that rings true to you in any way, shape, or form.
Oh, well, yeah, absolutely. And especially having spent some time in the US and sort of seeing how they kind of treat them. It's like you're sort of crazy cousins, you know what I mean? Where like maybe your demeanor is just slightly different, in bulk. So, I think that the sort of, American Southern Canadians is kind of, polite. We have less sort of pleasant sort of stereotypes to apply to New Zealanders in general. They are good at rugby, though, that's for sure. Cricket, yeah, not so much. They can't say the number 6 properly. Big problem. Also, if you get them talking about Fab, ask them for a deck check and see what they say.
Yeah, I didn't want to go down that route. Matt Rogers might be one of the kindest souls in the entire game, and I didn't want to do that. But yeah, you're right. Every time that there's the term deck check pronounced with that New Zealander, style, it kind of takes me back to sort of sex ed when I was in sex education in elementary school, learning about this stuff where you can't help but giggle. I was just like, just say the word.
Every time Hayden Dale gives it to me, if he's talking, talking about a deck tech, right, which they do a lot of over at Arsenal Pass, and always, gives me at least the corner of my mouth turning upwards. So it's nice. It's nice to hear dialects from the homeland. While I trawl through all this fab content as well, I do love how represented Australia and New Zealand are in their offering, sort of in terms of fab content, which is great. But yeah, no, we love our New Zealander brothers. We definitely step in and protect them if they ever got into a scuffle. You know how it is. But we also love to hang a bit of crap on them every now and then.
Yeah, it's like, we're kind of like, as Canadians towards the U.S., the same thing. We're kind of like your little brothers, except we're the little brothers who have all our shit together. And but
yes.
But if someone wants to pick a fight, we know that we're gonna call on our bigger brother. It's kind of like you need the muscle at certain points, and I get it. I get it. It's just the way it is. But the origin story is what I'm most fascinated in right now, Mitch Leslie, because again, you've cut your teeth very, very profoundly within Overwatch League. Overwatch is a game that I have been obsessed with for so long, and there's Overwatch 2 now, and things are ramping up again with OWL. And you yourself, your origin stories regarding cards, because again, I know you from Fab. I've seen you casting before, but I've made, connections with you through Flesh and Blood. So I'm just kind of wondering what your origin is in terms of card games. How deep does it go? A lot of people have roots all the way to the 90s with Magic and all the way now through till Flesh and Blood. Where did it begin for you for it to end up where you are now, which is winning tournaments with Flesh and Blood?
Yeah, sure. I mean, it actually goes back way before I even got my hands on cardboard. A lot of the times from cartoons that I watch. So, like, I'm 30 now. So, like, during my childhood shows like Yu-Gi-Oh! And even the lesser-known Duel Masters show, it was called, as a cartoon, right? And obviously, like, while they didn't exactly apply the rules as they are in the card game, the themes were still there. So I really loved those shows. And in grade 4, when I'm about 10, me and my brother we're making our own cards based on almost like the Yu-Gi-Oh series, because we couldn't quite convince Mum to get us those. I think she bloody caved a couple of times and got us some Pokemon cards. So when I was a young kid, I was into that stuff. Yeah, we were literally cutting up cardboard and making cards, and obviously my deck was busted and I didn't follow the rules and it wasn't balanced at all. So ever since I was young, the idea of sort of CCGs and competitive card games appealed to me a lot. As I sort of grew up, we sort of grew up in the countryside in a small town of about 13,000 people. So there's not a scene there. It wasn't until I moved to Adelaide when I was about 17, which is about 9 hours by car, but it's the closest capital city. I lived in a country town called Port Lincoln, where I could actually play some, and I did start playing Magic the Gathering back during like the Morningtide Lorwyn block. So quite a few years ago now. But even then, didn't really have the wherewithal to sort of play sort of competitively for long periods of time. But I, had maintained that casual relationship with Magic as I grew older. And then when Arena came out, obviously I was able to, experience the game without having to get myself out of tournaments. And through a mutual friend, I actually linked up with Tan and Grace, who of course is a familiar face on the show, and obviously a mate of yours going back. And he was a fan of Overwatch. We met through sort of like a mutual Magic friend, and it was like maybe a year ago, I hit him up. I'm like, yeah, I see you doing this Flesh and Blood thing. Tell me about it. I played Magic, but never really was getting out there and competing at tournaments, just more casually. And he's like, oh well, it's complicated. It's a very different beast from Magic. But I tell you what, I've got some mates. We're in a Discord. a Discord that doesn't exist.
Doesn't
Come on
exist.
in and learn a thing or two. The rest was history. I mean, now I'm watching, some of the best players, you know, just play practice games, and I'm asking questions, and everyone was really receptive and helping me. So it wasn't long before I picked the game up, maybe about 5-6 months ago, and started taking it a bit more seriously and saying, you know what, I'm going to invest here in playing Flesh and Blood, and I'm going to get myself out and try and play. Now I live in Southern California, so try and play as many tournaments as I can and really make a go of it. So the last 3-4 months I've been trying to play as many as I can, and even out here in Australia while I'm here, I played a skirmish last night, top 8. It got blown out in the quarters, but had a good time. So yeah, really enjoying just getting out to as many armories and events as I can.
The rise from, I remember when you would just kind of I wouldn't say lurk, but you're asking questions and such, sort of watching. I think it was a lot leading up to ProQuest season, not this one that just passed, but the ProQuest season for the New Jersey Pro Tour. That whole season, I remember you were just kind of a lot of. I was playing a lot of games at that point as well, and like you mentioned, it wasn't just a matter of, okay, you're jamming a game with one other person and you just play a few games and it's done. It was you playing against somebody else, and there was this crowd of about 5 or 6 other pro-level players that were observing. So the amount of scrutiny was incredible, the amount of pressure, because you're just playing those games. But I remember you were in there watching the games, and you would ask questions, and you would also play the games and sort of get to that point where, the levels of understanding, but the privilege that I think, we get being able to play with some of the best players in the world is just exceptional in terms of that meteoric rise, where from where you said picking up the game and asking Tannen questions about just the complexity to actually where you are now, which is top 8 skirmishes. But not only that, your success goes beyond just top 8 skirmishes. You've won events.
Yeah, look, I would say it not so large. I think I sort of started playing after ProQuest season, so I missed out on those. But I tried to chain as many armories together as I can, and armory's an armory, and but I did try and spike them because this is the highest level of competition I had at the time. But SoCal has some insane players, like some incredibly good players. A lot of the guys that you sort of see that are appearing in top 8s or at least up to top 32s of these pro tours, right? Names like Andrew Rudin, Philip Vu, a lot of these guys that Andrew, I know was I think he came second in Battle Hardened in Jersey, I think, playing Prism. So there are some really, really special players out here, and I have the chance to sort of, cross swords with them, on a weekly basis. The scene's really lively out here in SoCal, but like a lot of my, while a lot of my sort of wins come off, playing Briar, obviously through a time where, the only issue was, running into Starvo. Obviously that was sort of before that sort of rotation. Managing to get a few wins there. I think my first armory I ever played, I managed to win it, but it really is because, like you said, I literally have access to 2 different national champions, in this Discord we were playing it. I could harass Matt, or, Tarek would blow through sometimes. You could always take him aside and ask him a few things, and you've got great players, like obviously yourself, Tannen obviously just randomly turns up and top 4s, an RTN when he pleases, but guys like Brian and Dalen Mack as well. So I got fast-tracked because I was lucky enough to be able to ask these guys questions, and to be fair, I'm pretty voraciously consuming Fab content when I can. But I don't know if I have aspirations as a pro in that game, but it's a very rewarding endeavor to try and sort of learn it and sort of challenge myself by taking on competition when I can.
I gotta say that it's not necessarily on the radar. It was the same with me, where I was just like, no, I've always been a casual player. I've never done tournaments. I've never tried to. But I remember my first top 8 was sort of that nice little feeling, and then it's like you just want it every single time, and then that top 8 you want it to, it's like I want to advance around, I want to keep going, and you've been doing that, and I have every confidence that that's something that you're going to get to, and we will see Pro Tour Uber. It's going to happen. I guarantee you, it's on the radar for sure, dude.
Yeah, if I have my cake and eat it too, I might end up sat next to you guys on the commentary desk, because obviously, as you kind of alluded to, is probably that's where my passion, vocation connect in the greatest way. And that was part of my initial interest in really starting to pick up Flesh and Blood, because I've been a commentator now for about 12 years.
That's a damn long time.
Yeah, I mean, I was probably about as early as it was possible to have a career from it. I was sort of, it just lined up that I was able to sort of do it, and that is something that I started to realize that's something that I really am passionate about doing, and I've been very fortunate to be able to sort of forge a career doing that. So that was also one of the things about Flesh and Blood that really excited me, is I've never had a chance to sort of do card game commentary, but if there's an opportunity to do it, I definitely take advantage of it. And I benefit obviously from having guys like yourself and Tannen, and who I'm friends with, to sort of learn from, and also talk shop, which we do a fair bit.
Well, that's what I want to sort of dig into as well, is because you've really established yourself as a premier caster from fast-paced action, like FPSs, first-person shooters, and Overwatch team-based FPSs and objective-based shooters. Those are... listen, I'm not in any way, shape, or form trying to equate this to what you do, but there was an Ontario Overwatch League that I cast on my own. I say on my own. I was the only person operating the cameras, running the stream, doing the entire thing. It was like just my way of saying I would like to try it. It's an absolute circus. It is a circus, and even in my mind, I was like, even if there was like 3 other people helping me out, it's exhausting. So getting into the casting element of Overwatch, and you having this future aspiration of wanting to cast card games in Flesh and Blood, do you think that would you have a preference? Because in my eyes, they are 2 completely different monsters. Where Overwatch, the second that you stop to sort of think about things, you're already well behind. You've missed the Moira ult. You've missed the Reaper setting up on the high ground to drop the Beyblade on somebody and things like that. But here we are, and it's Flesh and Blood, and you have the joy of having someone like watching a Matt Rogers think his turn through on Oldham, and you're like,
Slab Daddy just sliding that Frosty 4 up and down the playmat.
Exactly. We actually were discussing on the stack. I said one of the statements on the stack was having a graded token is the ultimate flex, and he's like, damn right. He's like, nothing like giving your friend sliding a slab over with a frostbite on it, a gem 10 of a frostbite, and saying suck on that. But like, they're 2 different ball games, and I'm wondering what you think would be more difficult. And I mean, this is a loaded question, because you don't have much experience in one element, and you're like the tits on the other. So like, I'm just wondering, in your mind, there's obviously parallels and there's bridges between the 2 skill sets, but do you find that you might find one more difficult than the other?
Yeah, I think you're you're out of your tree if you try and approach the 2, with any similarity. Like if you go from trying to cast a fast-paced action shooter like Overwatch with limited downtime into a game like Flesh and Blood, and you apply the same approach, you're not going to get very far at all. You'll be out in your ass in seconds. I've been fortunate over my career to have cast like stuff at pretty different paces. So as a League of Legends caster, which I did for a few years and ended up doing some larger tournaments like Intel Extreme Masters, there is a lot of difference in pace. So you start in a lane phase that can be pretty sedentary, fairly slow as you sort of build up, and there's trading, and players are trying to freeze a lane, and the game changes. It gets a bit faster paced as you go. But how I got my break in esports casting was casting a game called World of Tanks. So I'll pitch you this. It's a 7v7 format, and these guys are in literal tanks that are historically accurate, and they are trundling at each other across a battlefield. So that is probably the closest analog I have to Flesh and Blood, and it's not really, I don't think it does it justice, but again, that's the kind of game where very, very slow, it's very conversational. The amount of time we spent talking about like gun caliber and how the front of the tank's armor was angled so that it would deflect, and so I mean, I've cast Goat Simulator. I've really had to, because when I work for ESL, which is, for those that don't know, is basically they provide white label services for all kind of game developers. They put on esports for games that don't have built-in esports departments. So Goat Simulator was one of them. World of Tanks, Battlefield, League of Legends, Counter-Strike, Call of Duty. And I couldn't just go there and say I'm an Overwatch caster, because the game didn't exist then. So I was told, you're casting these 4 games this week, Monday through Thursday, 4 different games. If you're going to make a full-time salary, you're going to get to work on this. So that was how I managed to bridge from being like a hobbyist, like in my room, casting Australian Call of Duty 4 matches, to actually making a living out of this vocation. So to answer your question in a really roundabout way, it's very different. I think that Flesh and Blood casting, in my opinion, it's pretty varied. I think you get the creme de la creme. You get yourself and Tannen and Scott Lieb up there in the booth on Pro Tours, and then you have like a lot of content on YouTube, which has like guys that might get a Discord call and chat some bollocks, or somewhere in between. So the biggest element, the most important part, I think, in Flesh and Blood commentary, first of all, is a really good understanding of like the objective of both the players, and also like what their considerations are when they're developing lines. I think my favorite part of Flesh and Blood casting, as someone who pursues casting as a lifelong sort of endeavor, is being able to sort of make projections either with information of the player's hand or otherwise about what lines they're sort of trying to craft, maybe some of the optimal plays that they can make, and also discussing how a blocking player or a player that is sort of on the back foot is trying to sort of pivot tempo back in their favor, whether it's by equipment or whatever. So chemistry, I think, is really important. So something that like you Pro Tour mob have really nailed down really well. I think like, between yourself, Brian, Tannen, for example, especially when you brought in obviously Armada and Red Zone, having that chemistry, that understanding between you is all really important. And then obviously having people that, for example, understand what Kano's trying to do. You know what I mean? I thought like that's something I really loved about Armada, getting to hear him in a Pro Tour where, Kano was coming out of the woodwork, and obviously like Sasha and Alexander Vore, I think it was, brought this hero into sort of top 32 at the very least, and it became a huge part of the conversation. The Arsenal Pass boys were really trying to make waves with that hero. Tough to prepare for that if you don't pick up Kano and Goldfish and sort of go for it. So having a deep knowledge of playing all those heroes is really important. There are some elements of play-by-play casting, right, which is kind of what I do. That's my specialty. That do apply, right? Being able to bounce off your co-commentator, being able to talk about the here and now in such a way that gets people leaning forward in their seat, and sort of to be able to build anticipation for the next turn cycle or for a player's reaction is really important. So it's a completely different beast. I've been a fan of Flesh and Blood coverage, and before that Magic the Gathering coverage, for a long time. So I think it's very unique, and I think it's really nuanced, and people that can really nail it, I think can be easily underrated by viewers, because there's a lot going on there, I think.
A lot of people tend to sort of underestimate what it takes to be a good caster, and I'm not trying to say this to pump our own tires, because that's what we do for a living, but ultimately...
Okay, self-serving, I'm on board with that.
Yeah, well, hey, let's a show of hands. Who thinks that casting is hard to do? All right, yeah, it's unanimous, but it's just more than just naming the cards, and a lot of people look at it, it's like, well, I can do that. I can name the cards that the players are playing and describe the impact, right? But it's more than that. It's about... lines of play. It's about understanding strategy, history of the cards. When you can pick up on a player changing their approach, or why is an opponent or why is a player taking long to make a seemingly obvious decision, things of that nature. And what I've come to realize is that when it comes to casting card games, you need to almost be on the same caliber of, you'll never be on the same caliber, in my opinion. Like the way that I always tell people is, I try to be as good as I can, but there's a reason why I'm not on the camera playing rather than just the voice. It's because I'm not as good as these players. If I was, I'd be out there playing for 25 grand, rather than making a fraction of that casting. The point is that when it comes to Overwatch, I was never a great Overwatch player. I was an okay, good Overwatch player, but I found that even when casting Overwatch, I was comfortable casting Overwatch because I knew what the heroes did, and a lot of it was reactionary, but I knew that the level of my casting was it was very superficial. And this is where you kind of feel that, from genre to genre, from title to title, there are certainly parallels and skill sets that you can borrow from one game to the other, but ultimately, unless you're really good at the game or you have a lot of depth within it, you will get exposed as just being, I don't want to say a hack, but a wannabe, a pretender, as it were.
And in card games and in Flesh and Blood, probably more than any, because the reality is the fundamentals carry over, I think. I'd like to hope so. And in my practice cast with Flesh and Blood, I've found that to be the case. But how can you foster an appreciation in the viewer for what a player is doing without being able to understand just how complex or how impressive that is? For example, like, you need to be able to convey what 2 auras on turn 0 from a prison player means. Yeah. You know what I mean? You need to be able to convey when a Guardian player is actually pivoting off of an aggressive strategy to a fatigue one, and how that is signposted from them, because that's the stuff that gets people leaning forward, because that's where you can appreciate the nuance in this game. Because in theory, a turn cycle is like, okay, well, all right, 3 damage per card, you got 4 cards, like that, to break outside of that very basic sort of framework of Flesh and Blood requires some, impressive feats of prediction, or sequencing, for example, or in Fire's case, just pop stubbies and Art of War. But there are these things that allow you to break out of like the very basic framework of Flesh and Blood that, put these players sort of above the rest. And if you can't appreciate that, then, it's very, very hard to get a member of the audience to appreciate it. And that is my calling, I think, as a commentator, is to, we're almost evangelizing these individuals at what they do, because I think what I've been really fortunate to find in esports and in competitive endeavors is that at the top level, one thing that links all competitive endeavors together is that these performances are put on by really extraordinary people. And I think that's what draws me to the craft, is actually expounding on it, or sharing the stories of these people, and also fostering an appreciation for, these extraordinary individuals in the viewer. That for me is one of the unifying aspects across casting that's always drawn me in. It's where my passion's found its conduit to spring forth. So, in Flesh and Blood, you really have to understand what's going on. I think just reading the cards and saying what they're doing is fine, and it will get you through. It'll get you through sort of 1A class. But that next step is to appreciate what's really going on, and the interplay between both competitors is crucial.
That's it, and it's going to take experience. For example, it's like, okay, way back when, there's a Starvo player playing against a Chain player. It's turn 3, both life totals are hefty, and you're thinking, why didn't the Oldham player play, eat the 5 or 6 damage to play a fused Oakenold? Why did that occur? It's like, well, it seems like the obvious play. You trade one for the other, and it seems optimal. But there's understanding that what this overall strategy is, what the consequences.
Why did the Bolton player get up from the table and walk away when his opponent played CNC and he has a card in Arsenal? That's my favorite. Watching Bolton plays. Oh, there was what was that? Was it the talisman that blows up the Arsenal if you play if you do 2 damage? I saw it in like a calling in SoCal, and it's like a really well-known Bolton player. And Chrissy Arley's playing Briar, and he's played this bloody talisman of warfare, I think it was. And the Bolton player's just gone. He's looked at the card, and he's just leaned back and just lost it. I thought,
where's your
incredible interaction? And I want to be able to express that to the viewer.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, the table is flipped for the following reasons, ladies and gentlemen. Yeah, exactly. Because this penny rare that we just found here absolutely ruined this guy's entire pro experience. Yeah. One of the things that I always convey to people is, one of the best compliments I get, frankly, is not like, hey, you did a good job or this or that. It's when I'm at events and I'm performing well, or even just playing in general. And one of the best comments I always get is when people say, it's really nice to see casters playing the game. And if I'm top 8ing, RTNs or ProQuests, it's when people are saying like, hey, I'm glad that you're doing well. It means a lot for the game when the people representing it actually play it and understand it and perform well in it. I find that for myself, there's a responsibility, and I'm wondering if you feel this as well, a responsibility to the game and the broadcast for you to be on the best level that you possibly can, and not just recognize card art, like to understand the meta, to be literally mired in it, knee deep. It's in your DNA. You've played it to the nth degree. I'm wondering if you feel that same kind of responsibility, be it with Overwatch. And you and I have played Overwatch together, and you're a great player. You're a great quarterback, as it were, of what's going on and such. And I'm just wondering if you feel that same pressure of, if I'm not, not necessarily Grandmaster or whatever, those ranks are in Overwatch, but just playing and succeeding at whatever the game is that you're representing. Do you feel those pressures to be on that top level?
Yeah, especially because for me, I feel very strongly about reciprocating the investment that pro players make in their craft in my own way. So now what their endeavor looks like is 100%, committed to the game, being the very best player that they can. I want to give 100% too, but it might look like, 70% being the best caster I can be, 30% trying to make sure I can appreciate the game at that level, right? And that requires you to be there yourself to a degree. You don't have to be GM. You don't have to be the Pro Tour necessarily. But you owe it. I feel like I owe it to the players to reciprocate their commitment in order to, because it also allows me to more accurately convey just how extraordinary they are by understanding that. So I think that balance probably varies across across games, and it really depends. And I'm like a diamond Overwatch player. We spent some time in Masters, so it's like it's okay. If your GM it's very bad, but you know what I mean. It's above average. But it's important to me to be able to look at these players and appreciate their circumstances in a game, and then that means then I can actually convey just how impressive or important what they're able to do in game is. And the same applies to Flesh and Blood. It weighs upon me to be able to step up and try and match the commitment of the player as a caster. And that means you embrace professional development not only in your fundamentals but in your understanding of the subject matter.
That's professionalism, and I hear it all the time. It's like, well, what I can do what you do. It's like, okay, do it. It's gonna take you time. I always tell people, I say, you want my job, come get it. Nobody's standing in your way. But
it's not that glamorous either. I say to people like, oh, like it looks fun, like what you do. I'm like, that's true. But I also spent 6 years in my room trying to just sounding crap and doing it to like 5 people on a radio broadcast, and just the only reason I managed to get through is because I really loved it. So you can try and do this, but if you don't have a true passion for it, you probably just won't make it, because it's such a circuitous, winding route to become a broadcaster in something as niche as video games, and even more in card games, right? It's not a voyage that you can probably complete unless you have a genuine passion for it, which is a great vetting mechanism, I think, for people in our positions. I encourage everyone to give it a try. But, a lot of people won't be able to get past the fact that I can hear my own voice here, and I hate it. You know what I mean? There's a lot of that stuff you just have to make your peace with, I think.
I tell people, it's like, you want the biggest reality? It's that I think my first paycheck came after about 2,000 hours of recorded video content that I've produced, that much. And I say, if you're comfortable with putting that much time in before you see a dime, then by all means. But like you said, it's not a glamorous endeavor. And the one thing that, for me, it's the best thing in the world, because this is what I absolutely adore doing. So I will never, to me, it's never about the money. And trust me, getting paid well is always a good feeling, because I really like to eat and pay rent. It's a great thing to have. Like, those are the kinds of first world problems I'm okay with. Rent and food bills are something okay, but like, it's a reality that people need to dig into, that it's not limos and being famous and like, the way that I've been described as your card game famous, as in people know who you are within this very small niche of awesome people.
Yeah, but I call myself a niche internet micro celebrity.
Micro celebrity. I've never heard of it referred to as that, but I like it.
Yeah.
So now that we're you're getting your feet wet in Flesh and Blood, you've had a lot of reps now, you're getting serious about it, and I want to know if there's any, we've talked about parallels in terms of casting in the broadcasts of Overwatch versus a card game like Flesh and Blood, but what about the parallels in terms of play styles? Control, aggro, is there something like that is similar in Overwatch? And I guess the follow-up to that would be, what would be the GOATs of Flesh and Blood? And for those who don't know what GOATs is, you can also kind of describe that better.
Yeah, okay. So GOATs is a composition in Overwatch that came about as a result of durability and safety being like put at a premium by players. So they wanted to play the safest, most high healing, most high durability compositions possible, and it ended up being 3 tanks and 3 healers. Obviously no damage dealers, no DPS, because they just were considered a little risky to play. It resulted in about 9 months of pretty stale gameplay at the pro level. A lot of these T comps that just sort of ran at each other. It was like an Oldham mirror. Yeah, where both Oldhams just decided to take the E strikes and the Oakenolds and throw them over their shoulders and just fatigue each other. So that to me that was GOATs. Yeah, okay, good question. So I think at the moment, obviously, between the roles on Overwatch, I think obviously offense is like playing Fire or Briar. That's something very, very aggressive. I feel like supports are like Prism players. To be fair, they like to sit back behind the shields. You know what I mean? Or Dromire players, if they're the bloody Sigil of Solace and they just give them the Dragon's Go again and getting life at the same time. And then, I don't know, flex players is the best way to put it, is sort of mid-range players like me. I love playing mid-range in Flesh and Blood. That's why I sort of play Dorinthia, for example. And yeah, that to me is like a player that can sort of play a few different roles. But now Overwatch is role locked. It didn't used to be. We used to have players that would sort of, on pro teams, they would be able to play tank and DPS and support if required. But now it's sort of 2 of each role, or now rather it's 2, and 1 now in 5v5. So yeah, a little bit of a stretch to think about it, but I definitely think my playstyle in Overwatch is carried over into Flesh and Blood. I like to try and be flexible as possible. Yeah.
Goat says the old mirror. I don't think there's ever been a more accurate, parallel.
They just don't die. They just die. They just fatigue each other. That's it.
I got into Overwatch during the time where there was no, you can duplicate heroes on a comp, and it's like, all right, I got to deal with like 2 Reinhardts and 2 Bastions and 2 Mercies, and it's like, what the hell do we even do? Like, how do we even get through this?
Well, teams used to basically, so in Overwatch, obviously, there's a payload that moves by the attackers, and the defenders have to sort of prevent it from advancing. Teams would literally all switch to Diva, and one at a time, they'd run out to the cart, they get ejected from the suit, then they get removed, but the cart wouldn't move because they were contesting it. Then the next Diva flies out of spawn, does the same thing. Then the next one, and there's a constant stream of Divas coming out, installing the cart, and ad infinitum. So obviously, there were some really busted things you could do in the game when there were no restrictions, but the developers wanted, to give that agency to the players to come up with those things, and eventually realized that they were just not good for gameplay, so they put some restrictions on it, and here we are.
Oh, well, here we are indeed. And Overwatch 2 is around the corner. We've played, you and I, in the beta. I'm looking forward to that. Yeah. Surprisingly, or surprising to me, might not be surprising to others, Tannen Grace is a little bit of a spike when it comes to this game. Like, he's not bad when it comes to shooters.
Yeah, he's a little dirty on the Moira, though, isn't he? A little bit of Suck, a little bit of Golden Rain, a little bit of this, that, and the other. He gets in there. Yeah, I mean, that's kind of how I ran into him, because he was a Houston Outlaws fan, I think, and we had a mutual friend that sort of linked us up, and we played a few games of Overwatch together. So it's kind of cool actually to have that, where we spend so much time talking about Flesh and Blood and sort of theory crafting and playing games, but sometimes we can mix it up and play some Overwatch together. It's always fun. I kind of like being able to approach the game and play with my friends and not think about the optimal strategy. Just kind of have a good time. So
yeah, if a Flesh and Blood casting Tannen is not the same as Moira Tannen, who just ulted and killed 5 people, and it is absolutely talking crap to the other team.
Yeah.
That's a Tannen that everybody needs to be aware of.
I mean, I will be honest. Both you and Tannen, you get your trash talk on big time when you play. Yeah. Whether you're playing Reinhardt or Farah, you are like every hammer swing is followed up by an expletive. You know what I mean?
I think there's a clip. I'm gonna see if I can dig it up and maybe play it. Play it in a break over here. But there's a clip where you were doing a stream, and I asked you on your stream. I said, "Is Flake the best Reinhardt player you've ever seen?"
It does help it. Is Flake the best Reinhardt player? Currently not signed out. Are you good at Reinhardt? I know you play a lot of Farah. I can never tell. Because normally when I'm playing, all I just hear is fuck you, fuck you, fuck you, fuck you, especially in fuck you. And I see the kill feed, I'm like, okay, well, clearly Flake's doing something, but I have no idea, how mechanically, involved that is, or if you're just, farming people, so.
Listen,
the primal side of you comes out when you've got that hammer in your hands, you know what I mean?
Oh, man. Listen, when you fire strike the entire team, you just, you fire, or sorry, you hammer down the entire team. You pin one to the wall, you fire strike the Mercy in the air, and you swing and clean up the rest. You gotta say a 4-letter word. You have to. Like, how else are they gonna know that you were that awesome?
I think it's in our genetic code. It's one of those sort of involuntary reactions like breathing, so it's fine. I never begrudge you that.
So I got to ask you then what heroes you're currently gravitating towards, because everybody eventually has their home field advantage, as it were. And I know that recently you played Dorinthia against me as I was trying Icelander, a little CC version, and that was a gritty game. I thought I had that one in the bag, and you muscled that one out in a really greasy way. But is Dorinthia your new bay, or what's your deal here?
No, I mean, I've always gravitated to the warrior class in Flesh and Blood. I really enjoy the efficiency of sort of depending on your weapon as well, in terms of as opposed to performing multiple sort of attack actions. So when I first picked up the game, she definitely caught my eye. But I was there's enough of a spike in me that sort of put me off when I realized look, if you understood what Dorinthia was likely to do in terms of attack reactions, you probably kind of had her pegged. I came to the game at a time where she was just not good and couldn't do a thing against Darvo, and obviously Prism was just an auto loss for her, and still is in some senses. But some of the tools that she got in the classic battle set, meant that sometimes when you swing with a naked Dawnblade, it doesn't just mean a Glint the Quicksilver or your bolters. You can represent a lot more with just a naked Dawnblade swing. So upon realizing that, I said, okay, well, now we have some options, and obviously Glistening Steelblade is a nasty threat in and of itself, and Run Through is a great way of saying, okay, well, I'm going to go again on this weapon. I'm not going to waste a Glint from an unblocked Dawnblade, and I can actually load my second swing a little bit more. I think that's made a huge difference to Dorinthia. I still think that obviously Prism will gatekeep her in a big way. And I think the thing is that all these cards I've mentioned, these new cards are yellow. So, you bring in a lot of yellows into a deck that generally, is pretty resource greedy, and that can create some clunkier turns. So there are a couple of Dorinthia players that I really admire, look up to, and I love watching the games. One of them is Josh Lau, who many people know. He's a warrior aficionado. Obviously Bolton and Dorinthia are heroes he loves playing. Another maybe lesser known player that I want to shout out is a guy by the name of Shin Inoue, who actually won his RTN on Dorinthia, and pilots more of a Dorinthia that brings in those powerful attack actions in terms of, you have a full suite of Erase Face and CNC in the sideboard, and he actually, brings in a spicy blue pummel to try and make sure he can get them across the line. So it's an approach to Dorinthia that I like, and it sort of keeps you current because you can have these threatening attack actions as opposed to a lot of Dorinthias might be just bring Nourishing Emptiness in, like a 1 or 2 off and try and threaten that. But I'm really enjoying watching as many sort of Shin's videos that I can and understand his approach to Dorinthia. She is the hero that first gripped me, as I think is the case for a lot of people. But I think that a great player like Shin is able to get success out of that, and that's kind of what attracts me to her, because in Flesh and Blood is the kind of game where you can have these specialists that can overcome sort of a weak meta, or maybe people sort of selling their deck short. I think Yuki's a great example of that. She brings a Lexi deck. She brings such an incredible understanding of how to play that archetype, how to play the deck, and how to tool that for different metas that she continually finds success, even in a metagame that's a little hostile towards what Lexi's trying to do. That specialist nature, that attracts me very much to Flesh and Blood, and also Dorinthia, because I really love how the warrior plays warrior or light, or light warrior, for example. Like I love those archetypes. It's a lot of fun. But if I want to spike, I'll sleeve Briar up. I do enjoy Rune Blades. I like the focus and the emphasis on sequencing that these decks sort of give you, and they often ask you to solve a lot of problems in that sequencing sense, and understanding how to bounce off of 5-card hands, or also maybe you don't block all that much, and navigating matchups where maybe Iceland or Alexi might force you to block, and having to play through that. I really enjoy the calculus that provides you. I try and if I had the time, I'd try and play a bit of everything, I think. But
yeah, it's hard.
I'm a Warrior stan, to my core, and I do think that Dorinthia has game. I think that mid-range decks, ones that can force Fi, for example, to block. I love forcing people to block. I love saying, I want to do this. I'm asking for a card. Give me a card. I want to sort of force my opponent to actually consider my game plan. And obviously, aggro decks will only do that when your opponent gets low. They're not always threatening a lot of on-hits. Like, Briar might draw you a card. Some opponents don't care about that. But Dorinthia says, hey, if you don't give me a card, obviously Dawnblade's going to sort of start to outscale you, in the same way that Lexi says, if you don't give me a card, I'm going to take it from you anyway. So that's those mid-range strategies really appeal to me in a big way. That's where I'm at right now. I want to still work on Dorinthia, and I think a lot of it, when I lose a game of Dorinthia, I don't go, this deck sucks, or this, because I know I'm net decking great players, but my fundamentals are what I want to develop through playing these mid-range strategies that require me to be flexible in my game plan. So that's where my FAB journey's at right now.
Well, that's good to hear. And, Dorinthia is, what I really appreciate about this game is that there's no hero that is just straightforward. There's no hero that just is like, well, it's just easy. This is just the way you play it. You pitch a card and you swing an attack, and you use 2 cards to block, and then you just rinse and repeat. Every hero has some nuance to it, and so many layers that you peel back that eventually you can figure out. Dorinthia is one of those, everybody has a bookshelf with books that they buy and haven't read yet, and that's Dorinthia for me. And I'm just waiting to find time to sort of go through all the other heroes that I want to learn. Rhinar I want to learn, Dorinthia I want to learn. But that's definitely a fascinating one. And the other important element to this is the fact that there is a major tournament that you've essentially been the catalyst for. Now, I have called this Uber's Beefcake Brawl. There needs to be a better, the Uber Classic. You don't even want your name associated to it, but I'm just gonna throw you under the bus here.
No, no. Ideally, no. If possible, not. I think so. Yeah. What is it? Obviously, because we've not really sort of talked about it, but in my I voraciously consume Fab content, right? Whether it's podcasts or I love the gauntlets that go up on the official Flesh and Blood YouTube channel, and a lot of the content, like guys like Ethan Van Sant are producing. I love that as well. I thought to myself, this content is great. I feel like there's a niche here where there are a lot of really known community members and top players in the Flesh and Blood scene that we hang on the edge of our seats for when a Pro Tour comes around to see these people play. They're disparate. Geographically, they're disparate, so you won't get to see them necessarily get coverage of like a ProQuest or an RTN. These are the players that sort of come together and only play at Pro Tours, and you might not see some of them. Maybe they do a Brendan Patrick and lose on camera and bubble out or whatever. So I said, let's invite some of the top, and some of these people are just incredible players, and you always see them sort of like your Michael Hamiltons of the world, right? Like they're not huge personalities, but they're incredible players. On the other side we've got people like Doa, for example, who is by no means a pro at Flesh and Blood, but really loves the game and is obviously a huge personality. Why don't we bring these people together and let's just get a tournament going? So the first question I said was, how do we make this in a way where it joins the ranks of all this other really compelling, exciting, and watchable Fab content out there, on YouTube, for example. So one of the things that, myself, you, and Tannen is also involved in sort of putting this together is, can we create something that has great production value, that involves compelling people, specialists or pros, and let's get commentary over the top of it. I will say, blatantly, it's also a way for myself to start, casting some Fab, because I think that, you're not going to see me at a Pro Tour anytime soon because, I've got other commitments and frankly, I haven't proven myself. So having an opportunity to cast some of these games is great, and it's definitely a big draw for me. But, so what I said, look, I'll put down a little bit just to, provide an appearance fee for all these players because, these guys are playing these matches for us. I want to give them some incentive. It's not going to be like, hey, I'm going to use my friend's clout to try and bring these players together, which was probably possible, but didn't sort of sit right with me. And I said, okay, well, let's get these guys to play on webcam, because one of the things that I really loved about Fab content that I found online is there's like a TTS league, right? Where you've got Hyperloops and Team, Hometown TCG Ascent and the card guys. We're all playing these weekly leagues, and they're so good, man. You've got to go check them out. The card guys has them on their YouTube channel. All these guys do, where they all get in there and they commentate it, and it's they're proper matches with top players. I think it was Sebastiano Cavallo versus Tyler Horsfall had a fantastic matchup in one of these online leagues. And I'm like, let's do this, but let's do it a little different. Let's get them to try and play on webcam. I think it's something that, probably sits a little bit better with Legend Story Studios, because we want to, keep it product centric and have their product being played with. And there's nothing wrong with doing a tournament on TTS at all. I think that makes perfect sense, and I make extensive use of that myself. But if we can, we're involving content creators and people that do a lot of this stuff. They probably have setups that can cater for this. Can we get a watchable, really viewable broadcast where they're playing with the cards themselves? Because that tactile feel, that physical nature, even if it's over webcam, is something that a lot of people really love about Flesh and Blood. So all this being said, let's put together a tournament with 16 really well-known players, whether they're pros or community figures, it doesn't matter, and have them play. Let's provide them, with an appearance fee, and maybe if we can get some sponsorship, we can actually provide some tiered pricing for them and make something of it. It was never supposed to be a big deal. It's definitely not supposed to have my name in it, but it's it's something that I felt strongly about. I don't think Fab content is missing anything per se, but I think there's a ton of opportunities to create really cool content. So, I'm really thankful to have yourself and Tannen, alongside to sort of help me put this together, because at the start I didn't really know where to begin. But, obviously I'm in Australia and my life's a little bit upside down, being where I am at the moment, literally, I guess, and figuratively. But we're hoping to get it together, ideally before Lille, but after, if we have to do it. We're going to get these games, we're going to cast them, we're going to bring in some, guests to help us cover them. I hope Brian Gottlieb's around and your Matt Rogers and stuff like that. And let's just add to the already fantastic sort of collection of great Fab content that's out there.
Yeah, and these for those who don't know, it's going to be a 16-person invitational tournament. The stakes are Uber's going to be putting up some cash and incentives, and we're still searching for sponsorship. So if you're out there and want to help sponsor this tournament, please by all means reach out to Uber or myself or Ten. But some of the names associated with this are phenomenal. When you mentioned that you want to get the best of the best, we have the best of the best. In terms of players, I'm going to read off some names here who are going to be involved and playing in this. There's going to be DM Armada, Red Zone Rogue, Matt Rogers, Yuki Lee Bender, Tarek Patel, Tyler Horsepool. I believe Michael Hamilton is playing, Isaac Kroot. Like, these are, I think that entire roster of 16 players, I think there's like 3 national champions. There's easily like
calling winners,
8 or 9 calling winners in there, countless battle hardens, and infinite top 8s of major events. Like, it's absolutely absurd who's involved in this. And all of these games are going to be, like you mentioned, cast. They're going to be produced and broadcast and uploaded. They're going to be on 93 Media's YouTube channel. So wherever this video is, this channel, you can go ahead and subscribe. Those are going to come. But yeah, I'm excited more so because of exactly what you said, because these are players who when we're setting up a broadcast for a calling or a pro tour or whatever, what we hunt for are those matchups that everybody wants to see. It's like who paired off? It's like, well, if you got Brendan Patrick versus Matt Rogers, it's like people will watch that.
It's on.
Yeah, they could be playing for a pack of gum, and people would be desperately wanting to tune into this. So, in terms of the mission and the intent, was it just, was it all about just creating these dream matchups and giving them something to play for, or was there more associated with that?
Well, I think that was a big part of it. I think that's kind of something that sort of draws us to it. It's the kind of stuff that I get excited about when I think about these sort of matchups. And look, I think there's probably a bunch of different reasons depending on sort of who you are for sort of getting involved. That was definitely a big part of it for me. It's like, how do I create? How do I incentivize some buy-in from these people that have busy lives and are have busy schedules? And I do want to say very quickly, huge shout out to those that have already agreed to come and be a part of this, because again, it's it's not like we're giving them a bloody PTI or $25,000. You know what I mean? Like the good nature of a lot of our competitors here and their desire to buy into something that's very new and this is the first iteration, might be pretty imperfect, is really appreciated. But I think that there are some fantastic stories in Flesh and Blood, and the game at a high level is just unlike any other card game. And if we can even reach a fraction of that with this, then and bring new people sort of to the game, or at least maybe someone's on the fence and wasn't sure about it, and they're seeing how these matches are played out. That match with the enthusiasm of the broadcast, and if we can give it some really high quality production value, then that's all aces for me. I think there's like a ton of good that we can sort of do with this in terms of moving the game forward. So but I'll be honest with you, like a big part of it was like, man, I want to cast some Flesh and Blood. You know what I mean? Like that was just admittedly, like, yeah, I said I really want to be a part of this. So I've got really high hopes for it. Again, we're not trying to blow it out into anything that it's not, but the buy-in from our sort of contestants has been fantastic, and that's hugely encouraging for me personally. Yeah.
The earliest iteration of 93 Media, 93 Media is the brainchild and owned by Mark Gibson, and the earliest iterations of what 93 Media did was something called the Wild Hunt North American Championship for Gwent, before there was any footprint of the game in North America in like 2017 or so. And that was a tournament that was out of my pocket, out of his pocket. We put it on live as a LAN in Philadelphia. And because we did that and broadcast that and had like 1,000 or 2,000 concurrent viewers for that little tournament on Twitch, that's what put me in the sort of in the crosshairs of CDPR, which got me hired as a caster and a host for their events. So I'm all about, if no one's going to give you a shot, so to speak, just make it yourself, just make it happen yourself. Not like you need to sort of prove yourself to anybody. You're a fantastic caster, but being a fantastic caster,
I'd like to prove that I'm dedicated to the community though as well. I think that maybe my casting resume might speak for itself if you know my work, but I'd also like to demonstrate that, I care a ton about this community and I really want to support it in whatever way I can, whether it's this or sort of any other way. That's important to me too, I think. Yeah.
Well, that is definitely important. It's something that's definitely appreciated as well, is the fact that there's no entitlement in that regard. It's not, you're not coming in and kicking the saloon doors open and saying, hey, do you know who I am? Like, this town ain't big enough for the two of us kind of thing. It's just, I love this game. I want to be involved with it. And here's what I'm going to do to contribute to the community and to contribute to the culture, and we appreciate you for that. Absolutely. It's important in that regard, because some people just want, to jump on whatever the train is, or whatever the hotness is, and no slight against them, but it showing that you care and that you're involved is also a great way to sort of solidify yourself within that culture. And
hey, hopefully, and if it goes well, hopefully we can run it back, right? Make it a regular thing, and maybe it becomes a fixture of the community, or maybe it doesn't. I think that's also fine, but I think kind of giving more opportunities for these players to show what they're capable of is never a bad thing, right? I think I understand why our calendar for Flesh and Blood works the way it does, and I the only thing I think is regrettable is that we don't get these top players always together at the same events, because they're competing in their national competitions, or Pro Tours are there's so many incredible undiscovered players as well. So these Pro Tours are just stacked with talent, and so many. Hopefully we can continue to unearth these like lesser known names as time goes on. But I think just, I think you probably feel the same way. Just getting to be a part of anything that sort of gives more visibility to the game or uncovers potential talent in Flesh and Blood is probably a pretty exciting prospect. So, I'd love to be able to do more of it. We're just going to make sure that we can do justice to, our competitors in this first one. So fingers crossed that we can keep everyone happy and put on a good show.
You're a legend, but I mean, you're not flawless, and I have to ask you, what is your biggest screw up that you've ever had on a live broadcast? Listening to you cast Overwatch is a joy, because things that I would say, you say, and I've always been very much one of those people of like, you're hiring me, you're not hiring the persona I play on camera. Like, you're hiring Flake, and you're getting me with all my foibles and all of my silliness, and that's what I love about listening to you, is because you get that Uber vibe. Like, even talking to you privately in Discord calls or just chatting or whatever, I'm like, yeah, man, like, this is like, there's authenticity, and for what Uber gets, what you get with Uber on broadcast is what you get with him otherwise. But there's got to be situations where you've either said that you've let the wrong thing slip through.
Oh yeah.
So hit us with your best one.
God, I had such a problem. So when we were doing the first couple seasons of the Overwatch League, we were operating out of like a large TV studio in Burbank, LA. It's where the Jay Leno show used to be. So like they paid a bunch of money to have this sort of live setup. And I had this problem, and it didn't happen all the time, but it happened to me more than anyone else, where we would be in like a casting tribune, I guess it's called, in the crowd. The crowd would be around us there. We get like a couple hundred people for like a Saturday game. It was good, but we'd walk the teams out onto the stage when we'd introduce them. And there's one day I'm just a bit scatterbrained this day, and I've chugged me bloody coffee, and I'm getting myself hyped up, but something's not quite right. And my producer's like, okay, listen, we're walking out the Shanghai Dragons first, and then the Los Angeles Gladiators. This is the order it's going to go. I'm like, yeah, no worries. Yeah, it's left to right, left to right, left to right. The producer's like, you got that? I'm like, yeah, no worries. So it's an important game. There's a lot on the line, and there's like the storylines are sort of big. And me and Matt come on camera, and we've sort of we've given like the cliff notes of the matchup. We've done a good top of show. I feel good about it. And I've just gone, with some rollicking line like something about, oh yeah, keeping the shields up for the city of Los Angeles. It is the LA Gladiators. And then out of the tunnel comes the Shanghai Dragons, and the production is listening to me, and they don't know what to do, because they hear me say that. They're listening to me. So the lighting guys have put up the purple lights for the Gladiators, but the Dragons are walking out. But the screen, the LED screen, shows the Dragons logo and stuff. So it's just a complete fuckfest. And it's because I've been reminded 3 times which team comes out, and I've still got the wrong one. And the Shanghai Dragons players are there. I think that a lot of them from South Korea, so they walk out here, and obviously they don't sort of hear it as I say it, but they know what I'm saying. They know I said the gladiators. So they walk out, and half of them turn and walk back into the bloody tunnel. And the other half are like standing around in the middle of the crowd, looking around, and everyone's confused. So, because I just can't remember the order of these bloody teams walking out, I've created the most scuffed moment, on our broadcast. A broadcast which really aspired to be one of the most professional esports products out there. And I'm in the crowd, so I can't chuck a wobbly. I can't have a tantrum about this. I have to keep it together. And I've just gone like this. And I've just not looked at the crowd because I know they're looking at me and I know they're laughing. And my co-commentator Matt, he's just looking at me with his slack jaw, like, how have you messed this up? And I've just gotten past it. And then I hear this voice in my ear. Okay, just call the Dragons. So I called the Dragons. They walked out and was fine in the end. But, oh, man. And so I'd caused a massive traffic sort of carnage from calling the wrong team out. So
it's two teams. Like it's not like there's like a crew of like you have to memorize like 10 different things in specific. It's two. You had a coin flip that you had previous knowledge of 3 times, and you still screwed it up. But to be honest, that is probably not the least professional thing that's happened at the Jay Leno Theater. Jay Leno being the all-time. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no doubt about it. I mean, I'll be honest. I won't say too much, but the dressing room there has like a secret tunnel leading out of the dressing room. And I felt when we looked around, we were like, "What the heck? There's a door, and it goes through like the masonry, and it comes out onto the street." I'm like, you know what? No, don't want to know. That's fine. It's here. So my dressing room, our wardrobe room was the green room there with this random bloody tunnel. So, yes, I dare say you're right.
I love it. Well, thank you so much, Mitch Leslie, aka Uber, for a wonderful conversation. I mean, you're one of the best, and it's not over yet, my friend. We've got another segment called Go Again. Will you join us for Go Again?
Absolutely. I'm all about that second Dawnblade hit, my guy. Let's go.
Beauty. All right. We'll be right back with Go Again with Mitch Leslie right after these words from BCW Supplies. Instant Speed is proudly supported by BCW Supplies. If you need protection for your cards, be it sleeves, deck boxes, storage, organizational tools, or hey, are you a comic book collector, a coin collector? BCW Supplies has your hookup. Use the code ISP10. Get 10% off all of your orders. Go to bcwsupplies.com. BCW, protect, store, display. All right, it's time to go again. We're going to go wide on a series of questions. It's Mitch Leslie, a.k.a. Uber. Wow, I'm having a Jay Leno moment of just screwing it all up for people. I'm so sorry. Just got to bring it back. You can tell I'm a Conan fan, like, through and through.
Yeah, I prefer Conan too, man. Yeah, guy's a legend.
Yeah, I went down a rabbit hole recently of watching easily about 5 to 6 hours of YouTube videos about people breaking down the Conan versus Leno thing. And nothing gets your blood boiling more than seeing people you cherish and adore get screwed by greedy types. But that's a whole other story. All right, rapid fire. You can go as deep as you want here, Uber, but don't feel pressured. Are you ready to go again?
Cool.
Let's do it.
Yeah, let's go.
What is Uber's hidden talent?
I'm good at remembering names, actually, and I just words. So, like, one of the reasons maybe I'm good at my job is because I remember these random ass words. I have a really extensive vocabulary. It's not really useful for anything, but turns out casting is all about saying the same thing 5,000 different ways. So it ended up being perfect.
You're not wrong about that. Unless those words are gladiators and dragons, then you have no freaking idea. That's totally good. Number 2, this is a two-parter coming from Sleep Coma from the Instant Speed Discord. 2 questions for Uber. Number 1, what similarities are there between casting CCG tournaments and Overwatch League events? And what's the best tactic to build up excitement for a match and create a narrative for the audience? Also, bonus, any chance we get to see a Flake Uber casting collaboration? I like that.
I mean, I'll answer the last one first. Absolutely. Sooner than you might think, to be honest. We've got some stuff in the works, as we talked about earlier. Okay, the parallels. Look, I think a lot of I would have to have done a Flesh and Blood event to truly be able to answer this, but I think a lot of the fundamentals are really the same. So working off your co-commentator, especially being a host, like in the play-by-play anchor position, a lot of the work you have to do there is pretty similar. A lot of the back and forth as well. As a play-by-play caster, you really need to talk about the here and now. You need to discuss where our decision trees might take us. That's something that I think also applies. And making extensive use of a color commentator, I think their job is probably the most similar, because a lot of the time the analysis requires what has happened and what may happen as a result of this action. And in Flesh and Blood, that's extremely important because you need to understand sort of the direction a player might take and what the consequences are of like a Dominated Crippling Crush or a Herald of Erudition that goes unblocked or a Phoenix Flame that Phoenix Form that has 3 flames on the bloody board. So that is quite similar. Where it differs is definitely where you sort of the devices you use in your speech and diction, because there are not as many points where it's appropriate to peak in terms of your pace and volume as it might be in a FPS. There are still some, but I'd say there are fewer and further between, and you really need to nail them in CCGs.
I love it.
The second question was building excitement, I guess, and sort of narrative. So, great point. One way I like to try and build narrative is, first of all, understand the history of the two teams. I want to understand their head-to-head in the past and what significant events may have transpired between the two rosters. Do they share a player? Has someone gone from one team to the other? Is there a grudge match? Was there a map 5 that went all the way last time they played that it provides a springboard into this matchup? So understanding what the stakes are from a perspective of comparing the two teams' aspirations and where they sort of sit in the league and what they're playing for is really important. So narrative is part of it, and then building excitement is a different story, because I want to talk about the stakes a lot, right? And I want to also sort of shade that with where the teams have come from and where they're going. So that's how I will build my story. A lot of time going to a grand final, I want to talk historic at top of show. I want to build up a narrative between the two last time they played. I want to talk about the last time they were in a game that was this important. That's something I did last year with the Shanghai Dragons versus the Atlanta Reign in the grand final. Two teams with storied histories, not so much against one another because they're from different regions, but in their home regions I wanted to sort of nail down. So yeah, there you go.
Love it. This one's from House, who's somebody who's played Overwatch with you and I. This is the Grandmaster Anna player asking, what's the biggest gamble career-wise that you've made that paid off, and one that didn't, and what did you learn from both?
Yeah, interesting. I've been really lucky. Not too many of my gambles have not paid off, I think. I'm still sort of waiting to see, where the wheels come off. But one of the gambles that paid off for me was definitely leaving Australia to go and work in esports. I have an engineering degree, aerospace engineering, and there were definitely opportunities for me to sort of pursue that career further. The biggest gamble I took was probably choosing not to pursue that career and actually just working in like a pharmacy, like a CVS or like a chemist warehouse, depending on where you live, for 2 years while I sort of continue to pursue that hobby on the side. And it was only after 2 years where it really turned into something. So I took a big risk bowing out of the engineering industry on something that may not eventuate. I got pretty lucky. I don't know if it was the most informed risk that I took, but it sort of worked out pretty well. And yeah, risks that haven't really worked out. So I think sometimes like the biggest risks that I take that haven't really worked out come down to some of the way that I deliver my broadcast. I bring a lot of jokes, or I try and use one-liners or a lot of sort of things like that. And some of these jokes just kind of fall flat a little bit, or they maybe a lot of the risk I take, they're really obscure, like in jokes. Like I don't know if you read Brandon Sanderson, Stormlight Archive, obviously a several favorite series of mine. It's like an obscure reference from like one of the characters in the book. Like who reads this, or like how many people really read that? So I don't think I've had too many of my risks fall flat. I think now I've got an 18-month-old kid. I've got a partner over in the States. So I don't take too many of those risks, and I probably have less, ability to do so. But I'll let you know if one doesn't pay off. So far, I've been blessed, very fortunate to not have had too many blow up in my face. Yeah.
The biggest gamble is always the one where you actually commit to taking your show on the road or committing to esports. That was my biggest one. I mean, you with your aerospace engineering degree. I was working, in the airline business on a pretty solid path to, being pretty high up over time and whatnot. And like, it was a tough decision, but it's not necessarily always about money. It's about passion and happiness. And the gamble I took was security to chase happiness, and I'm glad I did, and I'm glad that paid off. But I know that for some it doesn't work that way. My biggest gamble also was making a reference in Gwent tournaments. There's a card called the Emissary, and I made a Star Trek Deep Space Nine reference. That's a deep cut.
That's a deep cut.
Yes,
yeah.
I would refer to the card as Captain Benjamin Sisko, and and one person would tweet at me. They're like, "I got that one." I was like,
"Yeah." It's always one person, but and I always let that justify it to me. But there are like thousands of people that are like, this guy's out of his tree.
Yeah. I'm like, no, they're like, Benjamin Sisko. And I'm like, it's
So I wasn't a Trekkie, you know what I mean? So like that one would have gone over my head.
Certainly.
Unfortunately.
But it's not for you. Those are not for you. From Ralph Mazzone. I'm hoping I'm pronouncing that, Ralph, correctly. So this one says, most difficult caster skill to train up and master.
Yeah, okay. That's a really good one. I think a caster's ability to be specific, to be detailed without waffling and using too many words. Being concise but detailed is extremely difficult to do, especially in a game like Overwatch. And a lot of casters, even at the professional level, don't get it right. When I coach casters, when I give feedback to casters, it's the biggest thing. And I said, you are not being specific enough and you are not using this airtime adequately. Something that I still work on myself. Next to that, I'd say a caster's ability to modulate pace, volume, and tone all together, and to use those three sort of vocal devices to sort of heighten moments in casting. It's a lot of casters are really good at like one or two of those things, but all three is a really, really rare thing. And when you hear a caster that can do that, you can tell straight away that they're legit.
There's a lot of different ways that you can kind of really hammer down a moment. There's the words you choose, the pace, the volume, the intonation. Like there's so many different colors you can paint a picture with when it's with your voice. I've always found that some of the hardest things for me is to abandon a point I want to make because the game has progressed beyond that. Listening to someone speak and you're like, I have like this brilliant point, but if the ship has sailed, it's like,
And every time I force that through, and I forced that through in the past, every time I've done it, I've been like, the moment's gone. Like it doesn't make any sense now. You know what I mean?
Yep.
So every time I've gotten needy about needing to say the thing that I thought of, it never works out. So it's very hard to let that go, though. I know. It's
similar to that scene from Seinfeld where George is driving home and he realizes the perfect thing that he wants to say, but it's all like the moment's over. He's already on his way. It's long gone. Next up, I like this one. What kind of player is the Instalock Widow of Flesh and Blood? Now, for those who don't know what an Instalock Widow is, it's a very specific term to Flesh and Blood. Can you describe what an Instalock Widow is and what the significance of that player is and how?
Yeah, sure. So an Instalock Widow in Overwatch, obviously, Widowmaker is a sniper character. She could be considered the sniper character. And the people that Instalock her generally are trying to win the game on their own. Whether they're tilting or whether they genuinely think that they can have a huge impact. And more often than not, it doesn't have the intended effect because Overwatch is a team game, whether 6v6 or 5v5, and Widow is very powerful but requires a lot of space being created by her teammates. So in Flesh and Blood, obviously not being a team game, it's a little harder to say, but I would say it's like a player that just wants to rush the sort of most powerful strategy and sort of for me, it was chain players, in the past format, like someone who wants to play something really aggressive and not think too much about blocking and just be faster, just race. Right now, it's Fi. People sort of, it's people that force Fi in your drafts, but I guess that's kind of the best way to play. So maybe not quite accurate, but yeah, it's a phenomenon we encounter frequently in ranked games.
I like it. Here we go. This is from Fabled Academy. Alex from Fabled Academy, one of the best people in the community.
A big shout out to Fabled Academy. I really enjoy their content, yeah.
One tip to enter esports as a content creator. Now, Fabled Academy, you've already entered esports as a content creator. You're already a well-renowned one. But it just isn't from a general standpoint, I guess. What would be a good tip to offer someone who's looking to make waves in this space?
Yeah, sure. I think if you're already a content creator, then you're off to a great start because I think you have a skill set that will really serve you well. I think esports in many communities is chronically underserved by content creators. I think Overwatch is actually one of those for sure. Like anything, it's about finding your niche. So how do you get involved in esports, or like what part of esports are you interested in? Do you want to do analysis? Are you interested in being a play-by-play commentator? Would you be a producer, someone who would sort of put these shows together? I think that's a really important first step. And the second one is kind of like what we're doing with this invitational tournament is just do it. Create opportunities to show what you're capable of doing, because there's no cost, to just starting to create content around an esport. And in most cases, people are really receptive to it. You create this content and you head over to whatever competitive hubs there are for a certain game. So for Overwatch, it's r/competitive Overwatch. And you can post it there and you can get a lot of feedback on it. You can sort of get a feel for what people enjoy. I generally find that communities react well when, you know, content creators come and sort of try and serve them. Because ultimately, obviously, you know, you serve yourself by sating the creative urge as a content creator. But I think that like people that follow esports are always, you know, ravenous consumers of this content. I can tell you with someone like I spend literal hours a day consuming flesh and blood content. I trawl for God knows what. It's a random skirmish in Birmingham where a bloody 5 player is having to be told how Shuko works. Like, I'll watch all of that bloody video or whatever. So getting out there and just, putting something to and especially if you're like the FAB Academy, you already have a good understanding of what makes great content. You have a huge head start. So obviously really cliche in that sense, but find what you find compelling about esports and serve that urge with your content.
So what is the flesh and blood equivalent of a C9? Again, you might need to sort of give a little bit of context to what a C9 is.
So C9 is the acronym for Cloud9, which is a team in early Overwatch who had a real tendency to walk off the payload or to leave the objective inexplicably at really important moments. When you're defending an Overwatch and the attacking team is on the objective, you can stand on the objective and you can contest it, right? And so they won't be able to progress. So the cart won't move when you're standing on it as a defender, or if it's playing around like assault maps where you'd stand on a point and you'd have to fill a bar. As defenders, if you have one defender on the point, that bar won't fill at all. It will stop. So a C9 was something done by this team where like they'd be in a winning situation. They'd be defending a point, and for some reason, they'd step off the point. They'd leave the point for, following their own sort of aims, and they would allow the attacking team, who were in a losing position, to actually win the round because they just stepped off and stopped contesting the point. I think C9 in Flesh and Blood is failing to play around pummel. When that CNC comes in and your opponent has 2 floating or is representing 2 cards in their hand and you don't overblock by 4, that's a C9. You are going to lose a card and your arsenal, mate.
I think that's a very good. That's definitely a great parallel to draw here. My assessment here is is doing all the calculations and then forgetting that they have a tunic resource up, and then it's like, well, they can't swing Rosetta. They have no cards left, and then forgetting about it, and then having that just absolutely crush
maybe
yourself.
just forgetting a tunic counter, like our boy Fino Black, maybe is a more like accessible C9 because we
don't bring that back up. Fino, we get it. You've missed the tunic. It's that
Austin though, didn't it? I'm just saying.
Oh,
He'll tell you about it.
That is definitely arguable. To say that one tunic resource is what changed the dynamic of that game. That's a whole other discussion. Sure. Yeah, that's sure. No. Those types of conversations are for like those drama hunter style videos that people like to.
Yeah. We don't do that here. Of course.
We don't do that here. We create our own content. Okay, we are the content prime is what we are.
I just loved it. It was such a meme in the community for a while, and we got a chuckle out of it. But,
it was, and like you have to sort of feel for Fino in that position because you never know. It might have actually changed the dynamic of that particular game, but that's all history. And Fino is one of the best players in the world. So big props to Fino.
He's on Icelander now. Keep an eye out for that Icelander list.
Love it. I do love me some Icelander. Last one, Uber. What is your walkout music? Again, the pyro's going. Everybody's going banana cakes. And you step out through the fog machine, but what song is blaring?
It is 100% Thunderstruck by AC/DC.
I mean, it's a great song, but like I feel like that just is sort of just the cookie cutter response. I'm gonna have to. I gotta put you on blast here for this one. I'm not saying. Look, damn. I'm not.
Yeah, am I really a basic bro all this time?
Kinda. Damn. I mean, are you walking out with a pumpkin spice latte too, Uber? Like,
okay. I might live in Southern California, but I don't know if it's that bad. Okay, well, or something like something. I don't know, something like Death Magnetic by Metallica. Even one of their older ones that's kind of cool. But I fucking love, dude, bro, I love metal, man. Anything that's like, kind of driving and Number of the Beast, maybe. I don't fucking know. If I just reel off a bunch of basic... Okay, you know what? No. Rebecca Black's Friday. That's my walkout song. You fucking happy?
You know why? Because I'm sure your opponent would just concede at that point. You're like, whatever gets the music over faster. Like, forget it. Like, not happening. Yeah,
I'll take the swing and the miss on that one. Can't be perfect.
No, I mean, listen, you knocked 7 of 8 out of the park here. I mean, nobody's perfect, like I said, but
Thunderstruck bangs though, dude. Oh, it's so good.
It does.
Man. Sometimes the classics are just the best, man. I don't know.
You know what? Okay, so just for fun here, this is totally so Rebecca Black. I just want to make sure that I read those lyrics properly.
Yeah, they're actually very deep. She is a poet of our generation.
All right, so again, this is bonus content, everybody. But here. So again, we're gonna set the stage here, Uber, for you. There's like $100,000 on the line. Okay, there's like. This is being held at the same venue where Live Aid was done.
Okay.
There's thousands upon thousands of people. Music plays, and here goes. Ooh, 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 hoo, yeah, 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 yeah,
Yeah. Then the good stuff.
Yeah.
Then the good part. Yeah.
7 a.m.
7 a.m.
Yeah, waking up in the morning.
Gotta be fresh. Got to go downstairs. So, I mean, you're not wrong, right? Unless you have no stairs, in which case, well, okay, maybe it's not for you, but
Listen,
I have stairs here. So
that's what
got
I'm
to
saying.
have my bowl, got to have cereal, because balanced meals are a cornerstone to anybody's diet. If you want to compete at the highest level, don't skip breakfast.
This is like social commentary because not everybody has stairs. The luxury of stairs, or a bowl or cereal. So seeing
you can have it out of the packet. That's fine.
Yeah, okay, that's fine.
Right.
Gotta have. So yeah, seeing everything. The time is going, ticking on and on.
You're watching the round timer because you're playing against Oldham, and you know you don't want to. You got to get it done. So this is words for FAB players to live by. Yeah.
Seeing everything. The time is going, ticking on and on. Everybody's rushing
because they're all playing 5 because they're basic, but not us. Okay, because we're walking out to Rebecca Black. We're playing some mid-range stuff. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Some classy stuff.
Got to get down to the bus stop, Uber. Got to catch my bus. I see my friends.
If I O2 drop, I'm gonna bounce. I'm gonna head to Denny's or something. You know what I mean? That's just a part of the grind of life.
We're not even to the hot part of this entire song, because then she goes on again. One of the greatest, like if you're going down the line, like Shakespeare, Maya Angelou, Rebecca Black, right? Like these are all within the same sphere. Goes on to say, kick it in the front seat, sit in the back seat. All bases covered here.
Yeah, because I'm being chauffeured because I'm the Pro Tour champion. I don't drive my own vehicle. I have underlings that do that for me. Yeah, and the red carpet is actually just a bunch of cold fall tunics. Yeah, weren't shredded yet. Yeah,
gotta make my mind up. Which seat can I take?
Which one? Am I seat number 1 in the draft? Probably, but maybe I want to metagame that. Maybe I want to sort of, not come out as top seed if I'm, know there's like someone who's notorious for forcing fire. Maybe I want to be sat away from them,
And then we get to the pièce de résistance, my friend.
Yeah.
And this is the last bit of Rebecca Black I will ever speak out of my lips ever again. It's Friday. Got to get down on Friday. Which frankly would typically be like a day 1 of a major tournament. So you got to get down on day 1,
I'm getting down. I'm thinking about last minute changes to my deck. I'm letting my friends pressure me into not playing that yellow unmovable. You know what I mean? Like making good life choices in general.
Everybody's looking forward to the weekend. Friday. Got to get down on Friday. Everybody's looking forward to the weekend.
Yeah, because that's when we're playing FAB. And that's when it happens.
And at this point, probably I'd say about 27% of the audience have left. That's generally what that would be like. So thank you so much again, Uber, for doing the show.
It was a joy, Flag. Yeah.
You're the man, honestly, and one of my favorite people in the business and somebody whom I look up to and always entertaining. Uber, for those who need more of you in their life, where can they get, more Uber content? Where should they, I highly recommend people, if you haven't already, please check out some of Uber's work with Overwatch League. It is a sheer joy to be on that journey while he's calling matches. It is awesome. Where can they get more Uber?
Yeah, thanks. Obviously, you can check out the Overwatch League on YouTube. I'm on Twitter at Ubershouts. You can come harass me there. It's fine. I also stream on Twitch, twitch.tv/Ubershouts. Sort of 5 days a week when I'm back home, which I'm not right now. I stomp around my gym on Monday, Wednesday, Friday. So I do gym streams there. I hang out, just kind of chat. It's not really about the workout. I'm just sort of there doing it. And then Tuesday and Thursday, I'm usually playing games or something else like that. So you can come through there and follow me over on Twitch. And hope to have the opportunity to interact with you further. And this is kind of my first time, maybe speaking to the FAB community as a whole, as many of them sort of watch this content. So thanks for having me, and hopefully we get to play some games down the line, and I'm glad to be part of this community, and thanks for having me on the show, man.
You're a legend, dude, and anytime. You're welcome anytime, and I'm looking forward to the Beefcake Brawl, which will get a rename. It'll get a reskin down the line eventually. All right, friends, thank you so much for listening to Instant Speed. We will be back next week with another fantastic guest. Don't forget, you're not losing if you're learning. So keep up playing. You might win. We'll catch you next time on ISP. Bye-bye.